بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Today, inshallah, there will be the last episode, the last class, the last circle regarding Tasfiya Wa Tarbiya, in which we will conclude and we will give as well the benefits and the summarization of the whole lecture given by the Imam Sheikh Albani, Rahimahullah. That is the lecture that he had given more than 40 years ago, and in which he had dedicated his life for establishing that the only way to go back to the might and the honor for this ummah is by going through two main things. That is Tasfiya Wa Tarbiya. Tasfiya, and he meant by that the purification, the filterization of our religion from all of that which cling to it, that does not belong to it, whether it is from those who hate the Islam or those who love the Islam, but they have made a mistake, and those mistakes have been taken as to be principles by which other people have wala and bara on it, and they will say that our Imam is infallible. And then after purifying that religion and filterization, then we will do the second part, the Sheikh Albani says, which is the cultivation. That is to raise up the generation upon such a religion, and by which we could really do the amal after the ilm, the knowledge that follows with the action, and that would lift and remove the humiliation which is imposed upon this ummah. So today, inshallah, is the last class, and the Sheikh had finished everything regarding now in his lecture that we have said, the purification. Now he's talking about the cultivation, and page number is 46. That was the last page that we had talked about. So the brother's going to be reading from there, and if it doesn't matter, just go back where it says from the first paragraph, yes, so, yes, after. Now. Yes.
So after the tasfiya, purification of these matters, and the clarification of what is obligatory to proceed and advance upon, it is necessary to cultivate the new generation upon this authentic knowledge. This is the tarbiyah, which will produce for us the pure Islamic society and consequently establish for us an Islamic state. Without these two premises, the authentic knowledge and the correct tarbiyah upon the authentic knowledge, it is impossible, in my belief, that the base of Islam, or the rule of Islam, or the Islamic state will be established.
Can I just ask you, so every time there is a footnote, please try to read it for us. If there's a footnote related to anything over there, read the footnote. Okay. Now he's going to set up an example for that. So he's going to say the example of the necessitation or the necessity of the tarbiyah for the knowledge, for the tasfiya. Go ahead.
So I will give an example of the necessity of this correct tarbiyah. Amongst us, in Sham, there is a Muslim group, footnote, the group is Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun, the Muslim Brotherhood. This is from Sheikh Salim Bilali. Right, okay, here he says he's going to give an example of a group that was so active at this time, and they are the Jama'at al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun. And Jama'at al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun, that is, we want to just to give you a glimpse about them. Jama'at al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun, the founder of that Jama'ah is Hassan al-Banna. It was founded in the year 1347. That is in this other system, which is the Gregorian. It is 1928. Hassan al-Banna himself was born on the year 1324, which is 1906. 1906, and he died and he was killed on the year 1949, Gregorian date, which is 1368 Islamically. The person who was Hassan al-Banna, he himself was a person who was raised as a Sufi on the Tariq al-Hasafiyya, because his father was so. This man, he wanted, because he was raised up in the era where there was a colonization by the British, and there was as well at that time an attack on the Islamic culture from the secularists. So the person Hassan al-Banna, he wanted to first of all to establish the fact that there is no such thing, separation between religion and the state. That was his goal, and of course to resist all that type of secularism. So basically he wanted to make the Islamic state, and that is what is the target of every group, isn't it? The Islamic state. From the men which were known to this, belong to this group, one person called Hassan al-Ghudaybi, who was the murshid, you could say the spiritual leader of this jama'ah, this group, after the death or the killing or the assassination of Hassan al-Banna, 1950, when he became the spiritual leader. Well-known person as well, Sayyid Qutb, who was executed. Umar al-Tilmisani, and this is a very well-known person, because I have to give you these heads because if you come across them, you know they belong to the Ikhwani group or Haraka, whatever they want to call it, group, Jama'ah, partisan, Hizb, Haraka, movement, Tayyar, same thing, because we're not really talking about the words more than we talk about what is behind those words. Mustafa Mashhur, well known in the 1970s, according to the Gregorian dates. 1970s, this person had a lot of, as well, activities. Muhammad Mahmoud al-Sawaf in Iraq, well-known person, Muhammad Mahmoud al-Sawaf. And well-known figure, Mustafa Sibai in Syria. In Bilad al-Sham, where Sheikh Albani was at his time. Mustafa Sibai. Mustafa Sibai happens to be the Sheikh and the Murshid, the spiritual leader, and the teacher of Muhammad Surur. Muhammad bin Surur is the founder, whether he likes it or not, of a group called Sururis. But then you'll know the link between the Sururis and the Ikhwanis. Muhammad bin Surur, I could say that he's established something which is a cross-section between the Ikhwanis and the Salafis. So a very well sort of description for those groups is they are Ikhwanis inside, but from the outside they look as the people of the Salaf. But they're not. So they are actually, I would say, more of effect on the groups of the people than the Ikhwan Muslimun. I'll just tell you a personal story that happens to me when I was with Sheikh Al-Halabi. I paid a visit to this founder, Muhammad bin Surur, and he was in London. And that was before his group was well spread. We're talking about 1993 Gregorian dates. 1993. And I was in the house and I remember that he was talking about the moment of death of his Sheikh Mustafa Sibai. And he said that while he was dying, he said that he was calling on other than Allah Azza wa Jal. He's saying, oh such and such, please help me, oh such and such, please help me. Whether that is a fact or not, but was astonished and amazed and astounded us, made us really amazed that this person who is Muhammad bin Surur, he said, and I could find an excuse for my Sheikh doing so because of the pain that he is passing through. That he was calling on other than Allah to help him in that sort of sense. And I was really shocked when I heard this. And even Sheikh Al-Halabi, every time he recalls this, he reminds me, do you remember when we heard this? So I remember hearing this with my own ears, and since that time I knew that this person, he is not upon the haqq. From the people as well who are, as well, you could say, they champion the Ikhwanis at the moment. Al-Qaradawi, Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, well-known person now in this era, supporter of whatever is going on from the coups as well. Al-Qaradawi, Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. I call him now the youth provoker. I call him the youth provoker. He provokes the youth at the moment. And as well, and I would like to as well to drag your attention to somebody whom people maybe as well mix up because of his closeness to Ahl Sunnah. That is Umar al-Ashqar. Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar, he's from the Ikhwan. Even though that he's got a number of books to do with the Aqidah, but he is from the Ikhwan Muslimun. Yet when he talks about Sheikh Albani, he says, our Sheikh, and Sheikh Albani says he quotes a lot from the Sheikh Albani. What to do with his manhaj, he is an ikhwan, and we know him for a fact. And he had actually made a fatwa to have the zakah money to be given to the deviant intikhabiyya. He needs to promote somebody who is a candidate in election, to use the money for that, and he had made a booklet for this. Right, from their principle, which is well known, نتعاون فيما اتفقنا فيه ويعذر بعضنا البعض فيما اختلفنا فيه. That is, their main principle is to go away from whatever causes split, regardless whatever it is, even if it's to do with aqidah. So they say this slogan, this statement: we cooperate in whatever we are agreeing with each other, and we have an excuse to each other in things that we are different. So again, we cooperate together in what we are as a land of agreement here. And as for those lands which we disagree upon, we give excuse to one another. So now this principle has been discussed by a number of scholars, Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Albani, to refute that principle. Number one, what is wrong with this principle? Is that it's here, it does not really make a difference between this thing that we differ upon is small issues to do, for example, let's say, for example, wudu. Is it okay to make it we start with, for example, the face before we start with the hand, or before, that's to do with the issues of the fiqh, or is it to do with the aqidah? It doesn't differentiate. So he, for example, says, no problem, I would cooperate with you, even if you are a Sufi, even if you are a Mu'tazila, even if you are a Maturidi, or as long we have common land, common agreement, we agree with. And when we differ regarding the aqidah, the issues of aqidah to do with the sifat and the asma, even tawhid al-uluhiyyah, if we disagree, then we excuse one another. So that's the first mistake or danger about this principle. It does have a closed eye on the what? On the aqidah issue. Number two, regarding this principle, is yes, we excuse one another, and we have an excuse for one another after what? After advice. He says that there's no sort of gap for advice. We advise each other. So let's say we differ, me and you, regarding any issue. We don't just say, no problem, you have your own difference and I have my own difference, without having what? A dialogue of what? Seeing which one is the haqq. No, we don't have to debate, because debate here will split the ummah. Subhanallah. And the debate never stopped from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until today. The debate between Ammar ibn Yasir and Umar al-Khattab regarding the wudu. If everybody said, like for example, Umar al-Khattab, when a man came and he said to him, what should I do that if, for example, I was on janaba and I had no water? He said to him, don't pray. Then Ammar ibn Yasir said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, remember when one day we were on janaba, you did not pray, and for me I had a sand shower. I rolled myself in the sand. And then we went to the Prophet ﷺ, and then he told us that it is enough for us to what? To strike the land and say Bismillah, and then after that wipe the face and then the hands. This is a debate. Otherwise you could have just, no problem, Umar. You keep your opinion. You don't have to pray if you're on janaba and you have no water. And I keep my opinion, which is what we roll in the sand, have a sand shower. No, we have to advise one another, otherwise how can we clarify the mistakes? From that time until today, we should advise one another, and we can't. And that is what is wrong with the hizb, you see, of the jama'ah. The jama'ah, as long as you're with me under one umbrella, I will keep closed eye on whatever mistakes you do in religion, regardless whether it's aqidah or not aqidah. So you could come to my jama'ah, as a smoker, right? And with a tattoo in your hand, all right? But as long as you are under the umbrella, one jama'ah, and I will keep close eye. But if somebody else who's not from the jama'ah, he is not a smoker, he is not having tattoos, but yet he is not from your jama'ah, your criticism will never stop to that person, because he's not from your jama'ah. And that person should be closer to you, than that person whom you know, because that person, he obeys Allah Azza wa Jal, and he's having everything. But because he's not from your jama'ah, you criticize him so much. Whereas the one who was with you, keep closed eye, even that he was a smoker or he was a tattooed man. And I've seen that with my own eyes when we had debates with these jama'ah. Then, long career, subhanAllah, with these people. We had lots of jama'at in our country, lots of them. One of them is the Ikhwan al-Muslimun. And that is what Imam al-Shafi'i had said. وَعَيْنُ الرِّضَى عَنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَلِيلَةٌ وَلَكِنَّ عَيْنَ السُّخْطِ تُبْدِي الْمَسَاوِئِ. It's a line of poetry. He says, وَعَيْنُ الرِّضَى, that is the eye which is happy. عَنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَلِيلَةٌ. It will have a closed eye for every deficiency. Because you are pleased. When you are pleased, you'll have a closed eye because you're pleased, regardless of the deficiency, regardless of the mistake. But the eye which is displeased, eye has got an anger with you, dislikes you. وَلَكِنَّ عَيْنَ السُّخْطِ, it will criticize you, it will scrutinize every movement of you to find the mistakes, because I'm disproving what you are with. Because it's not because of you are with Allah, it's because you're not with my jama'ah. That is the jama'ah basically. And also from their principles, جمع 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 ثم لا شيء. Just gather, as long as you come brother, to jama'ah. And then what? And then what? As for the jama'at al-haq, it is not. Thaqif. Teach the people, and the people come around the what? The knowledge. But these people, they come in jamma', so they come in from Mu'tazila, doesn't matter, Maturidi doesn't matter, Salafi doesn't matter, Sha'ari doesn't matter, Sufi doesn't matter. Come together as long as you are Ikhwanis. And then under one umbrella. And even they pray, each one pray. One prays like this, one pray like that, one pray like this. One pray, it doesn't matter for them. How can you unite? If a person prays like this, and another person prays like that, and another person prays like this, and another person prays like that, and all of them next to each other, what unites them? Just one umbrella. Because they don't want to discuss it, because if you discuss this person will leave you, brother. No, don't touch that. If you discuss that, oh brother, this is Hanafi. You say to them, bye-bye for your jama'ah. I don't want your jama'ah. If you discuss that, Malik will say, no, I'm not going to be with you. See, they did not come with you because of the pleasure of Allah. They came for you because of certain goals. Okay, certain things, whether it is to do with nasheed or whether to do with whatever it is. It could be as well seeking positions in the government. I call it is al-Jama'at al-Munharifa, except for Tabligh. That is, it is the mother of all deviant group at the moment, the Jama'at al-Ikhwan. All the Jama'at that, from the Takfir, Muhajirun, they have evolved from this Jama'at. It's evolution theory from that. From them. So every Jama'at, the Takfir, the Jihad, and all the Jama'at are from this Jama'at al-Ikhwan. I call it the Jama'at, the mother of the Jama'at, except Jama'at Tabligh is totally different. Jama'at Tabligh is totally different from them. They don't really concern themselves with Tawheed, definitely. They don't rotate around the fatwa, definitely. Let's talk about some of their deviations. They will fight the Salafis to the last teeth. I would say to them, they fight the Salafi. They would accept the Sufi, no problem. Mu'tazili, no problem. Ash'ari, no problem. Jama'at Tabligh, no problem. Salafi, no. And if they were in control, the Salafis are under a lot of pressure. Maybe it is better to have a secularist government than to have Ikhwani governments. And this is well known. So if they are in control, and you want to have a live example, look what is happening in Gaza. Shia can take the freedom and call there, but not the Salafis. And that's the weakest place where Salafi is where Jama'at Hamas is in control at the moment in Gaza. They are in control, and that's why they don't let the Jama'at. Because the Salafi is, the Salafi is the call of Allah Azza wa Jal. I'm not calling you to a particular person. I'm not collecting, at the end of the day, 10% out of your, that's what they do as well. They collect 10% if you join the Jama'ah. There's no pledge as well. This is the religion of Allah. So if they let go of that sort of call, it straight away will pull up all the people. Because to do with knowledge, to do with you writing down and sitting down, writing down. Because for them, this is, what are you talking about? You're talking about these issues. Let's go and make liberation for such and such place, or Palestine, or whatever. But these people, they don't liberate Palestine, and they don't sit down for knowledge. I mean, if they're doing something liberation, well, what is that liberation they're doing? I haven't really seen any liberation. When we had any jihad going anywhere, let's just talk about the jihad in the Afghanistanis a long time ago, when it was a pure jihad. Who was there? Those people who were chanting jihad, thuri, all of it. We didn't find. We found all these people who was brought up to sit in front of the scholars, and they take knowledge, those people who studied the Aqidah, those people who had, they call it, because the Ikhwani, they take the mic, they say that this is short skirt, because the skirt is just on top of this ankle, they are really top of the ankle, this is really qushur, this is something which is to do with the skin, it is not to do with the heart of the matter, it is to do with, this is the skin, this is Allah's religion. Allah's religion. So we have to take the religion seriously, whether it is talking about the garment or the thobe is above the ankles, or it's to do with jihad, it's all of it together. Because if you can't do that, that is to raise up your thobe above your ankles, I can't really imagine you're going to go, put yourself in danger for the sake of Allah. I can't imagine that. Because you can't really carry, 5 kilos? You're telling me you're going to carry 100 kilos? You can't. So this is what is happening from the deviation. And number 2 as well, I will tell you as well, Jamil al-Rahman, one of the great Mujahideen, Salafi, he was in Afghanistan. He was killed at the hand of a person who brought up as an Ikhwan. That's how they go to the extent of killing their own brothers. They kill their own brothers. As for the, for example, bid'ah, I remember one day when Fajr, we were praying in one masjid, and I found, while we were praying, I could hear the footsteps of so many people entering in one go. So we started with, I think, 2 or 3 rows. 3 rows. And then when I finished the prayer, I looked, we ended up with 7 rows, about double. So about 4 rows entered together, or 3 rows, we're talking about 200 people together while we are praying the Fajr. And after I finished, and then I came to know that these people are from the Ikhwanis. What happened, that they were having all their recruits, those people of the followers, to sleep in the cemetery. Each person, and then I knew about it, and then each person had to take a grave and sit beside it and sleep beside it until the following day, until the Fajr prayer. This is to train themselves for not to be afraid, so on and so forth. And of course to recite Quran. And all of that is to do with bid'ah, because where is that teaching of the Prophet ﷺ to the companions, go and have a night in the graveyard? Where is the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ that you should not recite Quran in the cemetery? Where is the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ to the companions when he said to them, you should not step on top of the grave? The grave worshipping is a spiritual religion which is taken by most of the deviant religions. All of the Buddhists and all of the, for example, the fire worshippers and all of it, they rotate around what? Worshipping what? Dead people. They worship dead people. So this is basically because of the Sufi foundation of this group and the lack of knowledge, they ended up doing such a thing. And the Sheikh is going to give you another example in a minute of what they're doing. Maybe give you 2 examples. So let's just talk about as well 2 examples where the Sheikh talks about this Jama'ah because of their lack of knowledge. Now,
so I will give an example of the necessity of this correct tarbiyah. Amongst us in Sham, there is a Muslim group which wants to act according to Islam, bring new life into it, and to be cultivated with it, and cultivate the new generation upon it. However, we feel in entirety that many of those who guide others out there are in need of extensive learning about Islam themselves, upon the sound and authentic methodology which we have pointed out as preceded. We see many of these young Muslim youth calling one another to the gathering on the Friday night for its revival. This calling one another is for the obedience of Allah and for His worship, and this is something very beautiful. However, because they have not studied the Sunnah, and they have not studied its fiqh, and they have not found they have not found a generation which cultivated them upon it since their tender age, then they are falling into what opposes the Sunnah, and we point out with his sallallahu alaihi wasallam statement, do not single out the Friday from any of the other nights for prayer, and do not single out the day of Friday from the other days for fasting. So why do we revive that night of Friday whilst the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited us from it? The answer, because we have no knowledge.
And we could add to the Sheikh's answer as well, And these people, they're brought up in an environment where other ahzab and partisans which are deviant, and they were spreading around. Now this sort of ihya of Laylat al-Jumu'ah, the revival of the night of the Jumu'ah, that is the revival that is to make ibadah, in the night that precedes the Jumu'ah, which is Thursday night in English, Friday night in Islam. They call it Thursday night, which is the night after Thursday. Friday night, which is the night precedes Friday. That's what it is in Islam, night precedes Friday. You're not supposed to designate that night for ibadah. If it falls to be your ibadah, let's say for example you fast a day, you break another day, and happens to be Jumu'ah, no problem to fast that day. If you, for example, you make your qiyam for most of the nights, and it happens to be the Jumu'ah, no problem about that. But to designate that night, just in particular for qiyam, that's a bid'ah, and the Prophet ﷺ as well had prohibited us from that. Now, even if that prohibition did not come, it's still a bid'ah. Because if you do certain ibadah and designate a day for it, without having the verification from the Prophet of Allah, without that hadith is a bid'ah. But here the Prophet ﷺ had specified it with a prohibition for the sake of that so many people, they do, for example, acknowledge the Jumu'ah, a greatness, which is true, but because of that they might do extra ibadah for that great day, thinking that this is from the Islam, which is not. So because of that, Sufi, number one, they do that. I don't know if you know that, well, the Jamaat Tabligh, they do this as well. Jamaat Tabligh, they do that. That is the night of the Friday. After Thursday, they just go and gather themselves and they make this ibadah. Same thing because of the Sufi foundation of it. And remember that Hassan al-Banna, rahimahullah, he had the foundation of Hasafiyya, al-Tariqa al-Hasafiyya. Tariqa means like a way, because Sufism is a number of ways. Hasafiyya. And also there's a hadith that which is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, which the Prophet ﷺ is innocent from it. He who revives the 2 nights of the Eid, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would revive his heart when the hearts are dead. He who revives in ibadah. He makes the ibadah during the nights that precede the 2 Eids, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, and the Jumu'ah is Eid as well. Then he will be having his heart to be revived when Allah had made the hearts to die. So this is another fabricated hadith, which they, as well because of that they find these people are doing such an act. Now the Sheikh, do you have any footnote, please? Could you just tell me if there's a footnote? Always read it. 38. Oh, okay, they're gone. But there's 39 then later on. Yeah, when you reach it.
What is required is that the direction comes from the people of knowledge that it is not permissible to revive this night due to his sallallahu alaihi wasallam above mentioned saying. You will find others from amongst those good youth.
So then we have an example from the Shaykh regarding this Jama'ah, which is from the deviation, is that they specify the night of Jumu'ah for what? For ibadah. Now, another example.
You will find others from amongst those good youth who make lawful the listening of songs and musical instruments.
This is regardless whether they're Ikhwanis or Tahriris at that time, they do that as well, or any other, even just normal Muslims. They make it permissible and halal for them to listen to music.
Footnote.
Go on, the footnote here, and this is a very important footnote actually. Now.
Salim al-Hilali commented, rather, some of them have produced musical bands and have given them Islamic names.
Oh right, I know that for a fact. They have, they have rock and roll. Believe it or not. They have even, they have the pop charts that, for example, #1 song, #1 nasheed. So I used to have a bookshop myself, and in my bookshop, it was all of it to do with lectures, with the lectures of the scholars. But I used to have, it's not coincidence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is planning, but look at that coincidence that when I had my bookshop, it was a call center for the Salafi Da'wah, alhamdulillah. After a while, Jama'at al-Ikhwan, they have rented the apartment above me, above the bookshop. And then they put a big sign there, Jama'at al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun. So the person who comes to me is looking like we're coming what? To the Jama'ah. Or if he's been told to come to me, he might have made a mistake. It's just My door is next to their door. Their door goes upstairs, my door goes to myself. But mine says Maktaba. But my sign is not really as big as their Jama'at al-Ikhwan. Even one of the brothers who used to be a student, Jazallahu Khayran, he went to Egypt and he sent me a letter. I remember reading that letter. He said, MashaAllah, I've heard that you have even opened an institution for teaching the brothers above you. That was the rumor. That I had opened an institution above me to teach the Muslims, MashaAllah, the Salafi da'wah. But it wasn't the case. Anyway, Alhamdulillah, it worked in our favor, in my favor, in Islam's favor. That is, every person who wants to go upstairs, he comes and passes by. And I have to give him some immunization, but I give him the antidote. So he comes to me, and this is why I brought this topic. Can you just tell me, please, such and such, I don't know the nasheeds, which is the last nasheed, the last song for such and such person. I say to him, I had the last lecture of such and such sheikh. How about that? He's asking me about the latest record, the latest nasheed for such and such person, which I don't know them, by the way. And by the way, they make qiyam all that till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and they make their qiyam for their what? With their duf and their nasheed. And their nasheed is actually, when you listen to it, it's exactly like songs. It's actually being played with musical instruments, and then the musical instrument being removed. Do you understand that? Like, there was musical instruments when they have this, and then after that, because it's very easy to take the musical instrument and leave the sound. Because the sound, it looks like it's going with musical instruments. And this is, by the way, is exactly the same way if you are making halal, let's say grape juice out of wine. Are you allowed to do that? So you have wine, which is from grapes, and you want to turn it back to what? To grape juice. This is a process of taking it back, but you're not allowed to do that. So you are making halal from the musical instrument, which is haram. You're trying to make it back to what? Halal. Some of the words are, a'udhu billah, is to do with, manipulating your heart. And some of them is to do with, as well, I would say, I wouldn't say jihadi one, but, I would say that just pumps into you something like the songs. It's nothing to do with, so these people are fragile, I would say that. Very fragile, because they haven't been built properly upon the proper aqidah. So they were very easy to be taken away. And here we go. Every person comes there and comes to me. Have a word with him. And alhamdulillah, through that, there was a person, he happens to be one of the du'ah. He was from them, he used to go there, passed by me, he never went up there after that. And he became one of da'iyah now. And well-known da'iyah, mashallah. From that. As well, I used to have somebody who was a magician, a sorcerer. About 5, you could say, he lives about 5 doors away from me. A sorcerer, a well-known sorcerer. And that sorcerer, subhanAllah, he's well-known to the people even in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabian women, they are on Tawheed, they send their people to this sorcerer to, for example, treat them. And because they give them the address, near such and such bookshop. So when they don't find the address, they come to the bookshop. And I give them the antidote. Straight away, antidote is there. But one of them, he was a teacher from Saudi Arabia, plus the headmaster of the matter. Both of them coming from Saudi Arabia to see that. They don't know he's a magician also. Then I told him, Jazakallah, and we became so friendly as well, friends with it until today. We see each other from that moment. Alhamdulillah. And then after that, they had to really change their address near the such and such petrol station, not near the bookshop. Because the bookshop, until they upstairs as well, they closed. They don't want it anymore. After 3-4 years, they didn't like it because I'm taking their customers downstairs. Alhamdulillah. So it became not for them, for us, for the proper, not for us. There's no us in there. For the proper da'wah of Islam. We're not calling to a hizb. We're not calling to a person. We're calling to Allah. And we call into the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with the understanding of the companions. May Allah be pleased with them. The footnotes again.
Translator's note. An example of this extreme modernism can be seen today in many of the different branches of Ikhwan al-Muslimin in the West. Groups such as YM.
I don't know what's YM. You know it?
Young Muslims.
Okay, go ahead.
And ISB.
What's ISB? Huh?
Islamic Society of Britain.
Go on, another one.
In the UK, often hold international conferences which comprise so-called Islamic rap and pop groups, not to mention non-Muslim musicians.
Magicians.
You had a story.
Well, maybe magicians as in the circus, not the ones they do like something like, you know, as well for them. They don't mind having these things. I don't think so. Maybe for them it's all right. It's part of their entertainment. So you've heard about this. You could add to them as well. Anything that those people are passing the dawah through their rap. The rap. This is basically evolved from the Ikhwan Muslimun, those brotherhood. May Allah guide them. Now.
And this is because they find the radio broadcasts filling up the ears. There does not exist out there any general direction for this new Muslim generation that indeed the Messenger ﷺ prohibited stringed instruments and warned against listening to them. He ﷺ threatened those who enter into the evening with entertainment and amusement and who listen to stringed instruments that they will be transformed into apes and swine. The new generation has...
This is the hadith which is mentioned, he meant. By the way, does he say Sahihah of Sheikh Albani? 91? Which is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that those people who listen to the music, then they will be transformed into pigs and monkeys. And this hadith is to be authentic, that is said in the Silsila Sahihah of Sheikh Albani. Right, now coming to another topic as well, the continuation of that, go ahead.
This new generation has not been cultivated upon the knowledge of what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Is that too loud or too... No.
Because it finds many statements out there. For example, this generation finds Ibn Hazm, the Imam who has a treatise on the permissibility of musical instruments.
Right, okay. Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah. Ibn Hazm, he is Ali ibn Ahmad ibn Sa'id ibn Hazm. He died in the year 456 after Hijrah. 456 after the Hijrah. Ibn Hazm, they call him Zahiri. Zahiri means superficial. But I don't like that word. Zahiri, because we are Zahiris. Meaning that we take the text of Allah Azza wa Jalla as a text of Allah and the text of the Prophet as a text of the Prophet. We take it by the wordings. But here they mean Zahiri as actually is they are extra Zahiri. That means they would not go beyond the text. Or you could call them as one Sheikh, great Sheikh had called them, Sheikh Mashur Hafidhahullah, or Sheikh, he said, Nufatu Qiyas. They are what? They are rejecting the Qiyas. And we said with Qiyas is one of the principles by which we derive our ahkam. Not the aqidah, the ahkam. So Qiyas is to be there. And it's a very powerful element. He does not believe in Qiyas and he rejects it, but himself, he had fallen into Qiyas more than 80 times in his book Al-Muhalla. Right, in Siyar, by the way, this person, Ibn Hazm, even though he's a great scholar, yet we have deficiency in his aqidah regarding his asma' wa sifat. Even he's a jahmiyun in his sifat. Meaning, that is, he does not differentiate between, for example, for example, Ar-Rahman, he does not differentiate between the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala As-Sami' and Al-Basir and Al-Ali, Al-Qadir. Allah is the all-hearing, Allah is the all-seeing. It's for him, yes, we affirm it, but he does not know what the meaning of it. All of them mean the same, if you understand. And this is like, basically underneath it, you don't believe in the names and the attributes of Allah, the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because the Jahmiyyah, they don't say that we don't believe in Allah, we don't really believe in Allah's name, because if we believe in Allah's name, that means that we have more than one God. And Allah's attributes, we have more than God. So for him, it's all of them the same. All these attributes are to be the same, as for Ibn Hazm. But in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, for Imam al-Dhahabi, he describes Imam Ibn Hazm to be a great Imam, and he quotes Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, the Sultan of the Ulama. Sultan of the Ulama, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, we'll describe, inshallah, talk about Izz ibn Abd al-Salam. We might have a circle or a seminar or a symposium regarding those scholars. Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, he says, I did not see in the books of Islam more in knowledge, powerful in knowledge, more than the following two books. Al-Muhalla, which is Ibn Hazm. He said, Al-Izm al-Salam. Ibn Salam is a well-known, renowned scholar. He says, and I did not see more powerful in knowledge than these two books. Number one, Al-Muhalla Ibn Hazm. The second book, which is Al-Mughni Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. And the Sheikh, which is Imam al-Dhahabi, he adds, Sadaqa Allah. He says, Wallahi, Al-Izm al-Salam, he was truthful in saying that. But, as well, I add the third and a fourth to them. So he adds the third, Sunan al-Bayhaqi, Sunan al-Bayhaqi, and he adds the fourth, At-Tamheed ibn Abd al-Barr. He said, these four books, if the person, he studies them, and he spends his much of his time looking into these four books, then he is that scholar. Just if you read these four books, by the way, it's not a book. Al-Muhalla is in volumes, about 12 volumes. Okay? So I say book as in titles. If you really study these books properly, and you spend your time, وَأَمَّ عَلَى النَّظَرَ فِيهَا, and you really spend your time looking into them, then he is al-alim haqqa. He is the proper scholar. So these four books. But Sheikh Albani rahmatullah alayhi, when he was asked about Ibn Hazm, he said his books is good, but be aware of his tongue, which is a statement that's being given by a number of scholars. That is, yes, he's good, but be aware when you read them. And even was asked about reading the Muhalla, he said, if you are a person who's knowledgeable, you've got knowledge, read the Muhalla. Otherwise, don't read it. You have to be knowledgeable, because you have to know where he's wrong and where he's right. Where he's, for example, does not use the qiyas, and where, for example, his tongue is there. As they said, Lisan ibn Hazm wa Sayf al-Hajjaz somewhere. That is the tongue of al-Hajjaj, the tongue of Ibn Hazm, and the sword of al-Hajjaj, which is the killing sword, the same. Both of them are killers. The tongue of Ibn Hazm is a killer, and the sword of al-Hajjaj is a killer. The tongue of Ibn Hazm, sometimes you look at this donkey, what he's talking about. He's talking about scholars. Look at this majnoon, crazy person, what his statement is given. What a disgusting statement from that person. The way that he talks about it is very sharp and should not be used by the people of knowledge. But as I said, it's a principle, al-hikmah dalatul mu'min. That is the hikmah, the wisdom, the knowledge. It is your lost property that you want to look for it. Wherever you find it, you pick it up. So whether it is coming from George Bush, we'll take it, if it's correct. Or it's coming from somebody who is wise and righteous. Now,
footnote, Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, has refuted Ibn Hazm and all those who blindly follow him on this issue in his book, The Prohibition of Musical Instruments.
Tahrim Alat al-Talab. That's his book. Sheikh Al-Albani have made that book, mashallah, great book, Tahrim Alat al-Talab, to refute not just Ibn Hazm, all those who had hooked to Ibn Hazm to say that is our Salaf. Is our Salaf in this issue. One of them is Al-Qaradawi, of course, and before him, Muhammad al-Ghazali.
Before long, this treatise is published and propagated amongst the people and corresponds to their desire. Maybe some of those who guide others and some of those who claim to reform will say, as long as there exists this Imam who has the likes of this opinion, then we will follow him or blind follow him in our listening to music, especially as this has become a general necessity.
Not general necessity. It's a general problem, general general crisis. It's a general crisis. It's a crisis that these people, they follow these and they just take this. Imam, they said it Ibn Hazm. They are not following Ibn Hazm because he got the proof. They're following Ibn Hazm because he goes along with their whims and desires. They like it. Ibn Hazm said to them, let's say for example, no mortgages. Oh, no Ibn Hazm anymore. Because he's just not going along with my whims and desire. Now,
footnote,
Can you see that that person who had taken his God, his Lord to be, his hawa, his whims and desire, this is his God. Wherever it is, he will go. And this can be seen, number of people, how they take the fatwa from one mufti to another. They jump. They're not jumping because of the proof is with that person against that person. No. It is because that person had gave him a verdict, it gave him a fatwa that would serve his private, for example, affair or private benefit. Now,
footnote by Salim al-Hilali. Such as the likes of Dr. Yusuf ibn Abdullah al-Qaradawi from Egypt, and then Qatar, the one who has filled up his books and religious verdicts with the permissibility of that. Rather, he even boasts across select satellite channels and in the pages of newspapers and journals that he sometimes walks along the Corniche, taking pleasure in and listening to the Egyptian singer Faiza Ahmed. And in this...
Faiza Ahmed, alhamdulillah, by that I think Faiza Ahmed, she had left singing and she made tawbah. And you know, the problem is that these such scholars, they would say, why are you making such tawbah? You don't need to make a tawbah. Tawbah from what? You are not sinning in the first place to make tawbah. Singing, women singing. As long as that, if he says, that is not really singing, which is not really to do with arousing, if you understand me, singing. But he says, okay, no problem. So I don't know what's arousing here. Rock and roll, is it okay for him or not? I don't know. Rap, is it okay for him or not? I don't know. So what is not around? What is that music which is allowed? So he said, Faiza Ahmed, A'udhu Billah. Now,
and in this he is following his Sheikh Muhammad al-Ghazali as-Saqa.
Muhammad al-Ghazali Saqa. Now, Muhammad al-Ghazali is a well-known person who they call him a scholar in Egypt. He died, and he had made a book which is to do with the Sunnah. So the Sunnah, and nothing from the Sunnah is in the Sunnah. Nothing from the Sunnah is in the Sunnah. This Muhammad al-Ghazali was his Sheikh. I just give you a glimpse. When you have this Sheikh of yours is like that, no wonder why you act like him. No wonder why you're coming with bizarre, fatwa. This person, on the news, which is being documented in the magazine, the person who is the entertainer, the person who is the producer, or the person who is, doing the program, he was asking him, Sheikh Muhammad, what is you could say, the most funniest joke that made you laugh? Is it documented? So he says, the funniest joke that made me laugh is a caricature in one of these tabloids, in which the caricature shows an imam having two boxing gloves and trying to straighten up the line with them. This is a kufr. Straighten up the line with what? That means these people were Salafis, all the time, straighten up your row, straighten up your row. So this man is like with gloves. Come on, straighten up your row. Come on, man. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. What the Prophet ﷺ used to do? What did he used to do? The Prophet ﷺ, he will not say Allahu Akbar, and he makes sure that all the row is straight. There's no row, there's no lines, there's no ropes to do that. And he's got a stick as well for that. And he, with the rows like this, he pokes the people like this. Not hard, just, say that, come on, your shoulder. Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, at his time there was a massive jama'ah. He was the imam and the head of the state at the same time. When the iqamah is done, there was people being employed just to make sure that the rows are straight. In the meanwhile, there will be enough time before he says Allahu Akbar for a person to come and ask a fatwa from Uthman ibn Affan. So he's a mufti, on top of his head of the country, on top of his imam. He's a mufti. They would make a fatwa and then ask him, and then as soon as this gesture or sign come from there, that they are okay now. They're ready? Uthman radiallahu anhu, he would throw whatever, he had some pebbles in his hand on the floor, and he would start praying. Look, how much is the gap? Just to make sure that the rows are straight. Imagine that you're taking more than 30 seconds now these days just to line up. Maybe in this masjid, alhamdulillah. But some of the masajid, they'll make an uprising. They'll make a coup. they will take you out. Well, you're taking a long time. So some people have to say this, the enemy just looks like Allahu Akbar. The enemy looks, istawu, straighten up. You don't even look at them. Istawu, istawu. Allahu Akbar. Isn't it? They even know istawu. Allahu Akbar. He doesn't care. And not that the road becomes like, with the gaps. You could, put an elephant in between a person and another person. A gap like that. What is this? Is this the way to pray? And you find that even, subhanAllah, when somebody is far away from you in his body, you feel that you are on your own. You don't feel that heat of Iman coming to you. And each person, when you get closer to him, he get far away from you. Closer to him, get further away from him. Because of the ignorance. Because it's been taught like that, it has to be 4 fingers. And he counts in 4 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you really go too much, he will step on your foot. Like that. Just to give you a lesson, not to really approach anymore. Kick like a mule, like Anas radiallahu anhu. He was saying this, Anas, at his time. If he was saying it at his time, at the Dawla al-Umayyah, this is very close to the Prophet sallallahu. Anas, he was looking and he said, Wallahi, we weren't doing this. Subhanallah. It used to be feet to the feet, shoulder to the shoulder, neck to the neck, and he's in peril. Everything got together. Now, if these days I want to do that, they will kick like a mule. Now they kick like an elephant. They'll kick like I don't know what it is. More than a mule. A mule is simple now. A'udhu billah. He was threatening. And that is what is happening. Because of the lack of the knowledge and because of the spread of it, all these parties which are ignorant. This is the second reason. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Na'am.
But where is the Sunnah then? Indeed, the Sunnah has become completely forgotten. When the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed a cure for the lifting of the prevailing humiliation from us, then indeed it is nothing more than the return to the religion. Therefore it is obligatory upon us to understand the religion through the people of knowledge with a correct understanding, corresponding to the Quran and the Sunnah, and that we cultivate the righteous good generation upon that. That this is the way to cure the problem which every Muslim complains about. Indeed, the statement of one of the reformers in the present age, footnote by Salim al-Hilali, he is Hassan al-Hudaybi.
Hassan al-Hudaybi, remember what we said? He was the Murshid, the spiritual leader in 1950. Took over after his Sheikh Hassan al-Banna. Now,
indeed, the statement of one of the reformers in the present age pleases me. In reality, it is as if it is a summary of what I have said or explained above. In my opinion, it is as if it is an inspiration from the sky. He says, establish the Islamic State in your hearts, and it will be established for you upon your earth.
What do you understand from that? Establish the Islamic State in your heart. Well, what does that mean? You build buildings in your hearts? What does that mean? Means, before you see Islam being established in your land, have your Islam in your heart. Believe in it first. Implement it. First of all in your heart, then in the hearts of you are the closest to you, your wives and your children, in the house of yours, in the locality, in the town, in the city, in the country. You will establish in the whole of the earth. That's that's what it means. Because I was saying this, there was an argument between, I wouldn't say debate, but between this person who claims to be is the head of Hizb al-Tahrir with Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah, in one of these nights. And when the Sheikh had quoted that statement, he was saying, what do you mean, establish the Islamic State in your heart? And because the person who's arguing with the Sheikh, he's got nothing that would indicate he's a Muslim. No beard, no even though, very tight trouser, but he's a learned person in terms of, he knows all these things that we argue about, which is, for example, Mu'tazila Aqidah, he knows it. But if you look at him, nothing to do with Islam. So he says to him, the Sheikh, fix yourself before you call other people to establish Islamic State. You want to implement it yourself. You want to do it in yourself first, and then after that, in your closest to you. That's what it means. Now, coming to the conclusion, the Sheikh says, وَلَا بُدَّ.
Without doubt, We have to rectify ourselves on the foundation of our Islam and our religion up until the Islamic State is established upon this earth of ours. And this, as we have mentioned, cannot happen with ignorance. Rather, it only happens with knowledge. In conclusion, I advise every individual who is able to participate in this great matter that he and other than him cooperate with those who are qualified in explaining the Islam which came from the Quran and the Sunnah, and that he cooperate in the tarbiyah of the generation upon that. This is a reminder, and the reminder benefits the believers.
Always the reminder benefits the believers. Now,
may the peace and mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you.
Right, this is the conclusion of the Sheikh Albani's lecture, and we're going to just now give a summarization of 19 points. The summarization, I did not take it from the benefits, which is to do the index or the contents. We have just taken it, and it's almost similar, but I really haven't looked to compare. So it's good for you to take it down. Number one, khutbat al-haja. Khutbat al-haja and its importance to its revival. Khutbat al-haja is the addressing of need. He started inna alhamdulillah. So khutbat al-haja is very important, and we have to tell the people and the brothers who are heading the da'wah, doing for example, the Jumu'ah khutbah, doing the lectures, to start with that. But if the people, mashallah, they know it like us, sometimes we say alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam, no problem. But some people, they don't know it. Especially in the weddings as well, khutbat al-haja, the addressing need, is to be said before the wedding. When you wed somebody to somebody, then you say it. Number two, that this humiliation that this ummah had reached to is a sign of the prophethood. It's a sign of the prophethood. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, not a single year would pass except the following would be what? Worse. I was in the Speaker's Corner in London. And you know those people, some of them, they call to Islam, alhamdulillah, mashallah, the da'wah. Some of them, they call to nationalism, Palestinians or whatever. Some of them, they're just holding signs, isn't it? They just put a sign on top of him. There's nobody there looking at him. And even there's not saying a word, just putting a sign. It's like an idiot, I would say. So, one says, for example, Christianity atheism. So, he was asked, not by me, by somebody, what is Christianity atheism? He said, I believe in Jesus as a human being, not as a God. So what do you call this? Is Christianity atheism? Because Christianity is to do with Jesus as God, I don't believe that, so it's called atheism of Christianity. So we left that guy. Another person who's got a big sign on top of him, an old man, and he's got a hat, and he says, all he says, it's going to get worse. That was the best. I said to him, by the way, this is a prophecy. Prophet ﷺ said that. It's going to get worse. So he's not calling for anything, just that sign. And that was, I'm talking about 15 years ago. Huh? Maybe he said, I told you so. You should have said that. It's going to get worse. More than 20 years ago. طيب. The third point, that we must go back to the book and the sunnah to know the disease, to diagnose the disease, and to know the cure. This is what the Sheikh in the beginning says. We have to go back to the book and the sunnah to know, diagnose the disease and to know what is the cure. Point number 4 is the hadith of إِذَا تَبَايَعْتُمْ بِالْعِينَةِ. This is the hadith which was 1/3 of the lecture is about it. إِذَا تَبَايَعْتُمْ بِالْعِينَةِ, which is you trade in ina, and you hold on to the tail of the cows, and you satisfy yourself with agriculture, and you abandon jihad, and Allah will impose upon you humiliation which will not be lifted off until you go back to your religion. That hadith. Number 1, regarding this hadith, that is the Prophet ﷺ is being given jawami' al-kalim, collected words. Very few words, but it summarizes the whole problem of this ummah. Number 2, it is an indication, it's a proof that the Prophet ﷺ, he was inspired by revelation. Because it's like he's like living with us, he's telling us something 1,400 years ago or more, yet we're seeing it with our own eyes. It's like living with us. It's being inspired. It's not. Number 3, that is regarding this hadith, there are 2 types of disease that's been mentioned there. that hadith. Number one type disease, which is manipulation of the rules of Allah to make halal haram and haram halal. The second disease, that is running after dunya. Isn't it? Two types of disease. Making halal haram by the manipulation rules like all the Jews they do. And we have given you how the, remember an example? Anybody give me an example from the, yes?
They used to catch fish by
Not the Jews, they're talking about us.
Oh, okay. The billy goat.
Billy goat. The billy goat is a mustahab. One of these things. And of course, as well, we had other issues, like for example, shighar. Right, number 5, the danger of trading in Ina. The danger of trading in Ina. How? For example, to make riba halal. It looks like the Jews. We have no trust. That's why we are trading in Ina. That's why we don't really give, for example, borrowal. And also the Sheikh talked about the scholars making mistakes in legalizing, for example, what? Ina, and also what? Installment. Selling an installment and raising up the price for installment, same thing. Number 6, busying yourself with agriculture, it will take you away from religion. That is, if it's too much. But otherwise it is good. Remember, we talked about how to plant even a stem just before, if the die of the resurrection is going to take place and you've got time to plant it, plant it. You're going to plant it too. You're going to die anyway. But just show you the importance of what? Agriculture. But at the same time, one of the companions who saw it, he said that if this is too much of it, then there will be humiliation. That means keeping busy to the dunya. Number 7, jihad is important with all its types. All the jihad is type, whether the jihad of your whims and desire, which is the biggest and the most difficult, to fight your shaitan, to end up to the jihad of the enemies of Allah, in the sake of Allah. Number 8, going back to religion is the cure, to remove the humiliation and for this ummah to go to its honor and might, going back to the religion. Number 9, what type of religion that we should go to? What type of religion? That religion that we want to go to. This is the Sheikh. Number 10 point, he talks about the differences, huge differences, that is taking place between the aqidah of the Muslims and the creeds of them and their methodologies. Huge differences. What is the reason behind such differences? We take it into 3 reasons. Number 1, the ignorance. Number 2, blind following. Number 3, whims and desires. Because of 3 reasons, we have the split and differences in our religion. So all these divergence and all these differences amongst us in the religion are due to these 3 facts, big facts. Ignorance, and number 2, the blind following. Fanatic people, Hanafi, that's it. Closes his mind and everything. If you mind, for example, about 3, 4 floors, all the 4 floors being occupied. Hanafi, Hanafi, Hanafi. That's it. And the third one, whims and desire. Number 12. 11? 12 I said. 12, I'm just 12. 12, because I said 10 was the big differences between and number 11, the differences are due to 3 reasons. That's 11. 12, there is no way to go back to religion except by going back to the book and the sunnah. So we said we have to go back to the religion, to the remedy, but how can we go back to the religion? By going back to the what? The book of the sunnah. That's what the Sheikh said. We said there is, to lift off we said, remember, in point number 8, to lift or remove this disease, we need to go back to the religion. But how can you go back to religion? By going back to the book and the sunnah. Number 13, we need to purify, filterize our books, like the tafsir, the sunnah, all of that, fiqh, all of those, from whatever whatever is being clinged or hooked to it that would oppose the book and the sunnah. So purifying, purification, tasfiya. There are, remember we talked about things that really clearly, talks about. So the point number 14, from these examples that which are opposing the book and the sunnah, that is being taught in these books. Number 1, intoxication made by or from other than the grapes. You remember? We talked about that issue. So we talked about the madhab al-Hanafi. You remember? So we just put madhab al-Hanafi, the followers of the Hanafis, the blind followers of Abu Hanifa, the infallibility of Abu Hanifa, even the blind following of the scholars who had followed Abu Hanifa. They made it even permissible for the khamra. The making the imam is to be a holy saint. All of that. And we said that as a conclusion, the imam is a mujtahid. He makes mistakes. If he hits the target, he's got 2 rewards. If he does not hit the target, then he's got 1 reward. And also an example of that, making nikah without wali. So another example. Because we don't look at the proofs of other madhahib. That's why it ended up, this Hanafi, they stick until today that no problem. Make nikah without wali. 15, number 15, we have shabab zeal, the youth zeal in changing the laws, changing the rule, the rulers who rule by other than those of Allah, but at the same time, they haven't got the zeal to what? To change those very bizarre opinions that oppose the book and the sunnah, like the khamr, isn't it? They have the zeal, we want this leader to be gone, so why don't you talk about this madhab? It's got this thing which is khamr, is okay as long as it's not from the grapes and as long as it does not get you drunk. Number 16, it is the importance of teaching al-fiqh al-muqaran or al-muqarin. Remember the comparative fiqh, importance of teaching the fiqh al-muqarin. Number 17, establishing the Islamic state on which madhab. So if you want to establish Islamic state, which madhab? Because that person is going to put the laws, either is going to be affiliated to Hanafi, he's going to put the Hanafi, or the Shafi'i is going to be with the Shafi'i. So which madhab? That's what the Shaykh is dragging our attention to. And then he says, point number 18, sorry about that, I'm writing a lot. Now point number 18, that is, it is importance of the bringing up, raising up of the youth on the book, the sunnah, after it's been filterized, after it's been purified from all these wrong, verdicts. Then, as the Sheikh at point number 19, he has given examples about going into the wrong by the lack of knowledge. For example, Jama'at al-Ikhwan, when they revive the Jumu'ah night by making qiyam, or by these youth who make it halal to listen to the music. And point number 20, Aqimu dawlat al-Islam, this is the Hudaybi word, establish the Islamic state in your heart, it will be established in your land. That's point number 20, and this is the last point. Any question here? Fadl.
You mentioned about wearing the garment below the trousers. I've read many hadith, some talk about it wearing it in arrogance, some talk about just a special garment. Does it apply for every single garment? Does it apply for trousers, or is it just for clothes? Or is it in arrogance?
Okay, the question, I will take it part of the topic because we talked about it when we talked about when the Ikhwan Muslimun, they make fun of these things and they say that these people are concerning themselves with having their garment below, above their ankles when Palestine is being occupied. Who said that, this is going to be taking us away from Palestine, having your garment below or above ankles. Anyway, question is that he had read and heard some arguments regarding is the ankle, the raising up the garment when you put it down below the ankles, if it's out of arrogance or not arrogance, or it's just to do with the garment only and not the trousers or the sirwal. Okay. First of all, I know that there are some renowned scholars. They say that, for example, that it is okay to have your izar below your ankles as long as you don't mean arrogance. And they use the incident that took place with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu wa ardah, when the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was giving a clear warning to those people who have their garment below their ankles. He's saying, مَا أَسْفَرُ الْكَعْبَيْنِ فَفِي النَّارِ. Verily, what is below the ankles is to be in the hellfire. Not the garment. The person who's got the garment's done nothing wrong. The person who's put the garment is in the hellfire. And also he said, he who does lower his garment below his ankles, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at him and will not speak to him. Because of that, Abu Bakr, he had a garment where, though it was, whenever it's being left, it will go below his ankles, but he himself used to hold it. That means he used to hold it like that, to make sure that it does not go below his ankles. So he's asking the Prophet ﷺ about this. He said to him, إِنَّكَ لَا تَفْعَلُهُ خُيَلَاءَ. You're not doing it out of arrogance, O Abu Bakr. Because of that, these people had built mansions on top of that. Look, Abu Bakr, he did not say to him because of arrogance, so he could do it if it's not arrogance is intended. Well, that hadith is actually used against you, not for you. How? That is, this number one, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the big Siddiq. That's number one. Are you a big Siddiq? The biggest of the truthful one. Siddiq al-Akbar. The biggest Siddiq. Nobody can be like Abu Bakr. And number one. So you're not Abu Bakr. Number two. Abu Bakr, he heard this warning from the Prophet ﷺ, and he did not buy his garment deliberately below his ankles. He had it, and now he's hearing this warning. Whereas now that already these people got this warning, but they go and deliberately buy something which is what? Below their ankles. He had it already there. So why are you doing this? Why are you deliberately buying something? So if it's already done, well, you're going to have an excuse maybe. But this, Abu Bakr is already having it. Number three, Abu Bakr is holding it. So whenever he prays, he's holding it to make sure it does not go below his ankles. Are you telling me you hold your thawb, which you deliberately bought to be below your ankles? You didn't do it? You're not. Number four, where is that person who's going to tell you that you're not doing it out of arrogance? This is the Prophet of Allah, who's been inspired by revelation. He didn't say it just out of as a person to a person. Allah told him that Abu Bakr does not do it out of arrogance, because the Prophet of Allah can't look into the heart of Abu Bakr. It has to be inspired by Allah Azza wa Jal. Where is that person going to tell you, brother, you're not doing it out of arrogance? Fight these 4 points and then come and talk to me about the issue. These 4 points. Then we come to the conclusion. There is a difference between a person who lower his garment below his ankles without the intention of arrogance, and another one with the intention of arrogance. The one who is just below the ankles without arrogance is in the hellfire. But with the arrogance it's worse. Allah will not speak to you, and Allah will not look at you. Now, the people who goes to the hellfire, you might have a chance Allah will speak to you. It's even better chance, because you're going to go back, because you're Muslim, you're going to come out of the hellfire. But this person is not going to look at you, because Allah Azza wa Jal, He's telling you that you are falsehood or falsely trying to take an attribute that belongs to Allah, which is the pride. It's only for Allah Azza wa Jal, nobody else. Ana al-Jabbar, Ana al-Mutakabbir. Bring all of these kings and monarchs. They used to say that we are Jabbarun, we are the mighty ones, and we are the ones who are, pride into us, and they are arrogant as well. So you are taking one of the prides, you are calling yourself as that's why you are actually competing with Allah Azza wa Jalla. That's why He's not going to speak to you. He's not going to speak to you. That means that mercy has been gone. Look at you, mercy is gone. So that's what Allah Ta'ala. As for the trousers or the garment, we have a narration from Ibn Umar that he used to have a sarwal which is below his ankles. Well, let me tell you something. We leave Ibn Umar's understanding to Ibn Umar, if he has understood that. But we know for a fact that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Asfar al-Ka'bayni fa fi an-nar" is a general statement. If Ibn Umar did not have that statement, did not have it, then rightly so he might misunderstand it. That is, he used to have a sarwal which is below his ankles. But there is no difference between the sarwal and the thob. Anything below the ankles is not supposed to be so. So what is the best thing to do? Is to go and resew it. It's very easy, either to resew it, but I don't like it to keep rolling it. Rolling it is no problem, but if you're in the prayer, it's a problem. So in the prayer, you should not be rolling your trousers or your thobe, whatever, rolling it, because the Prophet ﷺ made us to pray, and everything in us will pray. That means your hair will pray, it cannot be tied up. Your clothes can be prayed, you can't roll your sleeves, you can't roll your trousers, your limbs will pray, so you can't roll them up. So what should I do? I do like Abu Bakr. Raise them up, ata'ahadu. Lift them while you are what? Praying, but to make an easy job for you, what are you going to do? Trim it, cut it. SubhanAllah, cut it. And this is how the companions, radiallahu anhum, they would just see something from the Prophet of Allah, they would not argue. As soon as they see him, why should you be going out of arrogance and out of arrogance? The Prophet of Allah, he had given us 3 places in the shin. Below the ankle is in the hellfire. Above the ankle, just about above the ankle, this is permissible. This is the minimum you could do. Above that, which is better. And 4 fingers below your knee, that's the best. Martabatul fadl. Just put 4 in your knee, put 4 fingers, and this is where I used to have Sheikh Albani said thob all the time. Okay? That's what they used to make, they take the skirts. This is martabatul fadl. How do we take that from the hadith? From the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he hit on the companion's foot, and he said, up to there. This is the garment of the believer. The believer is the best. Not the Muslim, he is the mu'min. So, and there is no harm, he said, between that vest until the ankles, or below the ankles, in the hellfire. So, these companions, whenever they see the Prophet doing something, they will just, قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. But you, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا, not you as in, and those people, سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا. We hear and we disobey. Soon as the Uthman radiallahu anhu ardah, he went to talk with the kuffar of mushrikeen regarding those prisoners of war, the captives in the battle of Uhud. He went to kuffar, and then Uthman ibn Affan as well, he came as well, he went to talk during the Hudaybiyah. His cousin from his family saw him, and he said he wanted to give him protection, because if Abu Sufyan sees him, he will kill him. But he came to negotiate with the people of Quraysh that we're not coming to fight, we're coming to what? We're coming to what? To make Hajj, to make Umrah. So anyway, some of the companions who were captives there, they saw Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu wa ardah, and his garment was up to that best place, which is 4 fingers below his ankles. So they asked him, who's that? He said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he commanded us for this. Each person takes a razor and cuts his garment. He would never say, is it out of arrogance? No arrogance. Just a piece of razor, cut his garment. And he would obey straight away, because these people, even in the prayers of the Prophet of Allah, taking his shoes off. Imagine, they take their shoes off. Imagine, Prophet of Allah takes his shoes off. I mean, it comes to it, maybe it's part of the prayer now. We have to take our shoes off. They do the same thing. These are the companions. Because they were like this is the way we are in triumph. Islam spread because of them. You are in debt to every dot of blood, every drop of blood of theirs. You are in debt to them. That Islam had reached you, and the Quran had reached you because of them, the companions. Know their fadl, their favors upon you. If you don't know their fadl, wallahi, you are jahid. A person, a'udhu billah, who does not thank people, he does not thank Allah. So you have to know their fadl, their favors upon you, all the time. Alhamdulillah. Had it been for Abu Bakr, we didn't be lost now. Radiallahu anhu wa ardah. He's the one who had stood firm in the battle of the apostasy. Right, I don't want this is an answer to the question. I answered it really thoroughly because I know that there was an answer coming from the same platform which maybe differs a bit from this. But believe me, that this is the opinion of our mashayikh. From Sheikh Albani, Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, this is our opinion. And they were even regarding the issue, can we pray behind somebody who's got his izar below his ankles or not? Do we pray behind him or not? To that extent. Right. Now.
Khutbah al-Hajj, does it have to be in that order or you could put the ayahs?
Khutbah al-Hajj, addressing only, came in Sahih al-Imam Muslim in different hadiths and as well in other books. The best book list for that is the booklet of Sheikh Albani, Khutbah al-Hajj is called. And in this Khutbah al-Hajj, the Prophet ﷺ had put the verses in the order that you hear it from me all the time, in that order. But there is the longer version and there is the smaller version. The longer version, which is with the verses. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh, and then the ayat. But the shorter version is without the verses. So you could say them without the verses in the middle. The 3 verses.
What about فَإِنَّ أَصْدَقَ الْحَدِيثِ rather than فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الْكَلَامِ? Is that correct?
No, that's not to do with the. It's nothing to do with the order. You asked me about the order.
No, that's the second question.
No, that's the second question different. So it's not to do with the order. As for the wordings, there are 2 wordings, for example, from the beginning, as well regarding the Khutbah al-Hajj, which is in that booklet. As for Inna Asdaq al-Hadith or Anna Ahsan al-Hadith, there is 2 as well narrations for that, and no problem. But stick to the narrations rather than to add to it, like these people, they say, Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nastahdihi wa natubu ilayhi. Where are you coming from, these words? Are you better than the Prophet ﷺ? If you believe that he has been given the correct words, he said, Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu. Nahmaduhu, we praise him. Wa nastahdihi, seek his guidance. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu, and seek his aid and seek his guidance. Then he says, wa nastaghfiruhu wa nastahdihi, ask his guidance more. Wa natubu ilayhi, and we repent to him. Why do you have to add these things? Why? Just stick to the word of the Prophet ﷺ. It's better. Even the wordings of, like for example, Inna khayra al-kalam, kalamullah. The best of the wordings is the words of Allah. The Prophet didn't say, Inna khayra al-kalam, kalamullahi ta'ala. It's like you say to the Prophet, why didn't you say ta'ala? Allah, the All-Highness. He said, kalamullah. And even it's more impact on the people's heart. Inna khayra al-kalam, kalamullah. Or Inna khayra al-kalam, kalamullahi ta'ala. Different, isn't it? Allah goes in the heart, isn't it? SubhanAllah. I'm not going to be Sufi here, but Allah's word, it's got a power to it. So don't add to words. You need to add. Stick to the wordings of the Khutbah al-Hajj. Now, تفضل.
I've heard that Khutbah al-Hajj is for like when you give talks, or when you start a book, you should be Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Like that's the sunnah.
But if you start a book or you start Khutbah al-Hajj, you start with Alhamdulillah, but the book you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If somebody said like this, we want to say, where is the proof? If he's saying, when the Prophet ﷺ used to send letters to their monarchs, to Hercules and all of those, we have some of the narrations where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, he praised Allah and his messenger, and this word praised Allah and his messenger means Khutbah al-Hajj. Now, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is to start with, you start the verses of the Quran, you start the letter, But you don't say it as, for example, a supplication to enter the masjid, or supplication to start your food, or a supplication to enter your house, or you don't say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Say what? Bismillah. In the name of Allah. Khutbah al-Hajjah, not just Khutbah al-Hajjah, khutbah, the most important thing, khutbah, the weddings. Did you come to a wedding, apart from your own, because I made it for you, where people, they start their marriage with khutbah al-Hajjah? No. Usually it's the case, Ya Allah, come on, marriage, yes, mashallah, Allah, and then that's it. But what's khutbah al-Hajjah? But the Prophet used to pressing on need. I need a good wife. Then we have khutbah al-Hajjah, to have a good marriage. And then you have these people who add things from them. One day I was with a wedding, person's performing the wedding, and then I was doing like this. I think I remember doing like this, or doing like that maybe. And he said to me, don't intertwine your fingers. I said, what? What was wrong? He says, this type of shirk. This is subhanallah. To intertwine your fingers is a sign of shirk. That means if that is going to affect you, a'udhu billah, it's going to affect the marriage. So like this, that means a bad sign for the marriage. How can it be? Have you heard about this? No? Alhamdulillah, you haven't heard about it. Tafadhal. And after that, you're inshallah.
You mentioned earlier that when they used to straighten the roads, the Ummah threw some pebbles on the floor.
Yes.
Was there a reason he had pebbles in his hand?
Is there any pebbles in the head? No, there was not. Like, for example, a person, he talks to you, sometimes you like to play around with something. Like, I like to play with my pencil. Okay? And that shows you that the masjid was pebbled, not was carpeted. Is what? Pebbled. Okay? But there is no something, for example, it's sunnah to have pebbles. No, there's no such thing.
The other brother's question about the izar being above the ankles, you ended by saying the scholars were even asked the question as to whether it's permissible to pray behind somebody who has their izar below their ankle. I was wondering what the answer was.
Oh, the answer. Right. It is makruh, disliked. We don't say it is unacceptable. It is disliked to pray behind any person who's making any type of innovation or prohibition. For verily the companions, they dislike to pray behind somebody who had spat into the direction of the Qibla. Like this. It is not dislike to pray behind it, because he made such an innovation. Subhanakallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.